Well, good afternoon, everyone. Beautiful spring day again here in New England. So we're excited about that. We're excited to have you here with us to learn about the KM-1, which is our new addition. Speed, flexibility, and durability is the name of the presentation, and we hope to show you how this device can really help your marketing efforts in all three areas. A couple of ground rules I'd just like to go over before we get started, and I introduce my lovely panel here. You have all come in on mute. That's just to keep the background noise low. I probably won't take you off of mute unless you raise your hand. So you'll notice you have a little control panel on the right side of your screen. You can actually expand or contract that with the orange arrow. But you'll see that there's a hand icon. You can raise your hand and I'll call on you probably at the end. And there's also a chat window. So we are going to have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. And if you type your questions in there, we'll be able to answer them at that time. Next, there are some handouts with this particular presentation. So if you expand your control window, you'll see there are three handouts. One is a fact sheet, which pretty much talks about the device as you're going to learn about today. The second one is a webinar quick info sheet. So that will have information about the panel here, as well as some links to some of the videos I'm showing you and some of the other things that we may mention as we go through this. And the third is what you're all excited about, which is the discount certificate. So that certificate can be downloaded and all of the rules and regulations and fine print are on there in terms of how you actually use that. So that being said, I'd like to introduce our panel today. My name is Chris Wells. I'm the Executive Vice President of Marketing here at DS Graphics Universal Wild. Also have with me today Brian Forrester, Director of New Business Development from Konica Minolta Business Solutions. Brian, say hello.
Hi, everyone.
And also Craig Surette, who is the Director of Business Development with GPA, probably one of the most progressive substrate manufacturers in the world. Craig?
Thanks so much, Chris. We're going to have a great call, lots of good information to share. Thanks for the time.
Excellent. You'll also know that at the end of this webinar, you're going to get a follow-up email, and the email will have a survey. If you could take the survey, we would very much appreciate it. It's real, as we say here in Boston, it's wicked easy. You just, it's one question, you rank something on a scale of 1 to 4, and it'll give us some pretty valuable insight to our business that we'd hope to use. Also, for any of you that have colleagues that weren't able to make yesterday's webinar or today's webinar, they are being recorded and we will post them on our education channel, which there is a link to in the handout sheet. And I'll be leaving the presentation open for just a few minutes after we finish so that you can all have a chance to download that so you don't have to worry about doing that now. So with that, I'm going to pass the controls over to Brian. And Brian's going to be able to talk to you a little bit more about the press. So give me 1 second, Brian, and I'm going to give you the controls. It's all you.
Great, and thanks everyone. Appreciate everyone being on board. Certainly excited to be here. You know, our partnership with DS Graphics Universal Wild means a lot to Konica Minolta, and we are so pleased. They are one of the first companies in the Northeast and in New England to adopt the KM-1 inkjet technology. So I hope to do is give you a little information today on why this technology means so much to them and what benefits it can provide to you and your customers. So many people in the print industry believe that inkjet is the print technology of the future. Many of you are familiar with inkjet from your home desktop printer. But we're talking about a very different type of inkjet technology here. The reason that so many people believe inkjet is the driving future of the industry is inkjet offers great speed. You're never contacting the paper. It's 100% digital. So there's no longer any plates needed, and every document can be variable from the next. You all are familiar with inkjet technology. There are a few different types you see in the bottom here. Most of you have a desktop printer that uses thermal. It heats up the ink, which gets pushed out of a nozzle to create a droplet. Next slide, please. So back in December of 6 of 2019, Dr. Frank Romano, Professor Frank Romano, who is pretty much considered to be the preeminent expert in printing in the United States, proclaimed that the KM-1 is the printing press of the future. And glad to see that it's on the floor here installed at DSG Universal Wireless facility in Lowell, Massachusetts. Next slide, please. So there's a number of particular advantages with UV inkjet, and UV inkjet is the technology that is being employed by the KM-1 versus water-based inkjet. So on the bottom, you'll see a graph, a series of images that outlines water-based inkjet, it's inkjet technology. As you know from your own experience with your desktop printer home, anytime you have heavy coverage, you have difficulties in drying, and you also end up with a sheet that gets wavy and curled. Alternatively to that, the KM-1 uses UV inkjet technology, or UV ink. There is no drying with UV ink. UV ink is chemically cured by UV light, so that the image stays flat and offers outstanding offset print quality. Next slide, please. Give you an idea of why that is. If you look at the top left of the screen, you'll see that UV inkjet actually gets cured. We call it dot freeze technology. It gets cured on top of the sheet in a very round, consistent droplet, versus water-based inkjet on the right-hand side. When it hits the sheet, it penetrates into the fibers of the paper, leading to reduced print quality. And you'll see from the dot structure there, you'll see how ragged the edges are. So the KM-1 offers the industry's best print quality. You also will see this is a real life depiction, a real life printing of the KM-1 versus the same document printed on water-based inkjet technology. You'll see on the left how well the image looks. Number one, how bright it is, but number two, how flat the sheet is. And look at that on the right-hand side, you'll see that there is a fair amount of waviness and cockle and curl to the sheet. So not good for high quality printing, not good for heavy coverage. And water-based inkjet does excel in text printing, but not heavy print quality areas. Next slide, please. It's going to be a quick video of the KM-1 for you to get a better understanding what the technology is.
Inkjet technology has transformed the way we print, bringing faster speeds, more efficient short runs, and quicker turnaround times, all with full variable data. While image quality has improved, there is still a limited number of printable substrates. Until now. Introducing the Konica Minolta KM-1. The KM-1 is a 29-inch sheet-fed UV inkjet press developed with Konica Minolta inkjet printhead, ink, and system technologies, together with digital expertise from our BizHub press products. Additionally, by adopting offset technology for the paper transport, the KM-1 provides fast turnaround, high quality, and stable printing job after job. The paper flexibility of the KM-1. Most competitive B2 printers can only print 4 up letter per sheet. The KM-1 can print 6 up letter per sheet. Sheet thickness from 2.4 to 24 point allows not only for commercial print, but also packaging applications with just one machine. Konica Minolta brings you a revolutionary inkjet press with high quality, reliable output, and consistent performance. Wider substrate versatility in media, with sizes up to 23 by 29.5 inches, sheet thickness from 2.4 to 24 point, and no pre-coating. A KM-1. Your customers are ready. Are you?
Giving shape to ideas, Konica Minolta.
So that was a quick video. We edited it to pare it down. So sorry for some of the jump cuts there. Other than what you heard, the press has an enormous sheet size of a 23, 29 inch. So it prints 6 up letters versus a 2 up on a toner-based device. But some of the real more important benefits of the UV inkjet is we print on virtually any paper stock. So there are no pre-treated papers or special inkjet papers or special indigo sheets required. We print on the same papers that you print offset jobs on. So because there's no contact to the paper, we can also print on a wide range of substrates that are textured like canvas and conical groove and heavy textured surfaces, since we're basically spraying the ink on. As I said earlier, we print on the same stock as offset. So if you have a job that you need to later reprint a smaller version that was previously run on offset, you have no worries of the paper not matching what you previously printed. As detailed in the video, the press also can handle a very wide range of stocks from a 17-pound vellum up to a 24-point board, and many different synthetics and plastics. All in all, what this wide range of stocks does for you is it reduces your paper costs compared to other digital technologies. Next slide, please. A couple of the other great benefits of the ink is it's extremely durable. So especially compared to toner and indigo prints. Our experience has shown very little damage in the United States postal automation system, and many folks are no longer going through the expense of UV coating or aqueous coating for protection in order to maintain the shelf life of a product. As I said earlier, I think the overwhelmingly benefits all of this technology from the KM-1 is it'll print virtually any print application digitally. So because of the wide paper weight range, because we can print on most synthetics, because we can print on most, almost all offset papers, it really opens up the applications you can print, from signage to folding cartons to direct mail, backlit displays, pocket folders, books, brochures, etc. So it really opens up the wide range of applications you can print digitally when you need that short to medium size run, and especially when you need variable data printing. So this slide shows some real life examples of jobs. So I'll just touch on a couple of them. In the top middle, this is a backlit sign printed on frosted styrene. If you walk into any Walgreens or Macy's or CVS, the makeup counter, all the Revlon backlit signs are printed on the KM-1, as well as all of their marketing materials because of the high quality of the product. The other reason that they print on this is that because it's inkjet, our image is consistent, so there's no variation in print quality through the run or from day to day or week to week. So they know they will get a consistent brand image with printing off of the KM-1. On the bottom left, you see it's a 6-up letter. So on this product, it's unique. The KM-1, we can get a 6-up full bleed image, which reduces your costs and increases productivity because it is printing 6-up. And on the bottom right, you'll see, I think it's a 24-up postcard job. So again, size really does matter, and the benefit to you is that it's more productive, so your cost per piece is generally lower. And just a couple more, we'll be done here. So top left, signage. So many customers are moving work off of wide format printers to this press because of the productivity that it produces versus slow wide format. On the upper right are some short run magazines printed. And then on the bottom, central is it's pretty thick. It's about 1.5 inches thick, perfect bound book. So again, the KM-1, great benefit is there's so much stuff you can do with it, and we're very excited to bring this to market with DS Graphics in New England. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Brian. Great overview, and we appreciate you putting that together for us. It's nice to get the real scoop from the manufacturer's perspective. So one of the things that, as any of you who have been on our webinars before know, is that a big part of our vision, or pretty much everything we look at, is based around response optimization. So if you haven't been with us before, I'll give you a quick definition of that, because I believe that this piece of equipment really hits that optimal zone that you see here in the graphic, probably better than anything that we've seen thus far. So we usually talk about this from a marketing perspective, in that when you're in pretty much any type of direct marketing channel, we're always trying to balance the efficiency of what we're doing, which we measure by the cost per unit, against the effectiveness, which we would measure by the response per unit. And historically, these two things have been somewhat diametrically opposed. So particularly in the print world, as we all know, there's a fairly significant setup cost involved in print, and it's not just from an equipment standpoint and an offset press and making plates and all these other, and getting up to color and all those other things. But there's also a fairly significant setup cost from an overhead perspective, estimating customer service, accounting, all those other things. So one of the things we're looking to do is to reduce that cost per unit by really looking at some of those overhead costs. And digital technology allows you to do that, not just from an equipment standpoint, but also from that overhead standpoint. Because if it's a digital device, we have a lot more flexibility in terms of how we can automate things to the press. But if you think about it from a marketing perspective, the best way to increase your efficiency or reduce your cost per unit is to do more of the same thing, right? We all know this. We go to that next price point break. We order this the additional 1,000 because it brings that cost per unit down. The problem with the model is that in order to increase the amount of pieces that we can utilize, we need to decrease the specificity of that piece. In order to increase the amount of pieces we're going to utilize, we need to increase the shelf life of that piece. All of these changes we have to make to try to use more end up reducing the effectiveness of the piece because they become less targeted, less personalized, less specific to an individual, to an industry, to a demographic, to a geographic region. So we've kind of hurt ourselves in that in order to bring that cost per unit down, we take things out that will make the piece too specific, which then hurts the other side of the equation, which is effectiveness. So effectiveness being the response per unit, if you think of that and take that to the extreme, the most effective pieces by far are individually personalized and targeted pieces. And if you really bring it down, a handwritten note is super effective. You want to see what the response rate is or an open rate for a handwritten note, it's through the roof. And we all know this. However, if you communicated all of your direct marketing efforts through handwritten notes, your cost per unit would be absolutely through the roof. It's not very scalable either. So in order to get that effectiveness curve to be able to marry or play nicely with the cost per unit curve, we need to introduce things like automation. We need to introduce things like personalization and variable data through the equipment itself and through the workflow that's put in front of it. So our whole goal is to look at everything we do, whether it's putting in a piece of technology, whether it's working on the entire supply chain process, or whether it's a particular piece of equipment, is how do we balance the efficiency and the effectiveness so that in an ideal world, we do two things to the cost per unit curve. First, we lower it because we're going to remove overhead, and then we flatten it so that in an ideal situation, the cost to produce the 10,000th piece is the same as the cost to produce the first piece. And we can't achieve that right now, but we're getting closer and closer. And then we take that, and if we can do that with the cost per unit curve first, we can then customize each piece through personalization and things of that nature to cause that response per unit or the effectiveness to go up. So the cool thing about this device is it really does a great job of balancing these two things. And how is that? Well, first thing we always look at is efficiency because everybody's interested in cost savings first. I tend to look at some of these things like the pool in the hotel. So we all go online. Well, we used to go online and book hotels and travel in the old days. But one of the things that most people look for are things like pools and fitness centers. And they will book a hotel because they have pools and fitness centers. The reality is most people never use those pools and fitness centers. So they book it because of that feature, but what they end up enjoying more is the service and things like that. And we see the same thing, particularly in technology solutions. People actually go forward with a technology solution because of the cost savings. But when you come back and talk to them afterwards, the biggest benefits tend to be things like saving more time, more effective marketing, things that they didn't actually buy it for. So we always start with cost savings because that's why people make the first jump. So what are some of the advantages to this device as it relates to our response optimization curve? First of all, larger sheet size, as Brian indicated, equals more up, equals a higher quantity ability at personalization and digital printing, which brings down the cost per unit. Also, larger sheet size, meaning we're working in over 4-page signatures. So we're working with 8-page signatures, less cutting, more efficient saddle stitching, lower cost per unit. More durable ink, Those of you that are in the mail stream know that if you're on Indigo, if you're on an Inkjet, you have a big problem with on a self-mailer making that piece come through to the end user in a non-damaged fashion. You don't have to pay for film lamination, offline UV, offline aqueous, lower cost per unit. No toner equals no specialized papers. Again, we can use regular offset papers. They're more available. We don't have a premium because they're being treated. Lower cost per unit. So it hits the efficiency side of the equation very well. What about effectiveness? Again, we have more durable ink, less damage. That's better response. And what I have here is a couple of images. This well-maintained clean machine is actually a barcode postal sorter in the USPS, and that's what your pieces are flying through at a rate of probably 35,000 per hour. And that's why you get this little thing that's on the right, which is this friction burn that pretty much every digitally printed piece will take the ink right off of it if it doesn't have a coating on it. It's always in pretty much the same place. It's kind of surprising it happens not only based on the cleanliness and well-maintained machine that you see here, but also the fact that they're trying to keep everything kind of equal sizes and things like that, so that you can set this little belt up to handle all these things in a very even manner. Being completely sarcastic if you haven't noticed. So this machine has got to get that postcard through, and it's also got to be wide enough to get that 6x9 envelope through. So what happens is the 6x9 envelope is much thicker, so when the postcard comes through, that belt just spins on it for a while until it grabs it and goes, and that's what causes the damage. So you get a better response rate with a better piece. Larger size, more interactivity. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Also, larger stock selection, more creativity, better response. Larger size means more efficient multi-page books, which means you can do more complex personalizations. Again, better response. So it's all about effectiveness. Some of you that have attended some of our webinars in the past, you've seen some of these graphs before in terms of how interactivity can relate to response rates, and you can see it really clearly here. Right, left to right, you're seeing increase in interactivity, and you're also seeing a significant increase in response rates to direct mail. Who doesn't want 18% direct mail? So one of the things, I have this link to the Fold Factory in the handout, but if you're looking to create a unique piece that requires people to fold and unfold, communicate information, the Fold Factory is a great resource for your designers. They have templates for all of these folded pieces that you're seeing here. If you follow Trish, who runs that on social media, you will also see that she posts a fold of the week. She has great t-shirts. And this is a direct mail piece that she talks about. She's sad because the fugitive glue ripped off the ink. That probably wouldn't happen on the KM-1, Brian. But anyways, you can see this is a direct mail piece that utilizes the size of an oversized digital press, where you can do personalization and really create an interactive experience with your folks. Also, this one, which I love because it conveys information. But if you have a brand that people like, where maybe even they want to display it, you can actually make the flip side of this a poster. So you can give the client a free gift to hang on their wall or whatever with the actual piece. So follow Trish. She's got really good stuff. And again, her website, foldfactory.com, has got templates for utilizing some of these things. So we look at this press as really playing into what our core value system is, which is how do we optimize responses in the direct marketing area? And this is a piece of equipment that does that very well. So I'm going to hand things over to Craig now, and Craig is going to talk to you about some print applications in a COVID-19 world that we're all kind of living in, but also some other cool applications that GPA has been able to do with some of their unbelievable substrates.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. All good, man. And folks, thanks for joining on the call today. And I'll pick up on that theme. As Chris had led in, the whole thought was, how do we weave this together? Well, why don't we shine a light on some applications that are really tracking strongly now, and try to hit as many industries based on those that have signed up today. And so if you will, I know we've got some folks on the call today from retail, from gaming, entertainment, higher ed, finance, a lot of direct mail here today. There's also some designers. So here's the deal. I'm going to share with you some case studies that are intended to spark ideas. They may apply directly to your business. They might not. They're intended to just shine a light what's trending right now, what's hard and fast in this COVID-19 print world, and what do we see over the horizon. And if it's direct, well, that's a win. If it's not quite there, that's okay too. As described, these are intended to be idea generators so that you've got an understanding about what's going on. All right, so we're gonna, yesterday we ran into a little difficulty with advancing the slide, so I'm just gonna play with this just for a moment, folks. Just bear with me, and I'll be able, oh, I do have control today. That works out so well today.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right, now you might be saying, well, didn't he just say he's gonna show us some case studies and he throws up a slide like this? What's it all about? Here's the important thing. Here's why. We know from studies and research, and GPA works closely with government, with industry agencies, with some leading customers like DSGUW, and we synthesize this information back into understanding trends. And it's important you understand this slide as follows. This COVID economy that we're in, it has obviously a beginning, a middle, which we're kind of in, and an end. But inside it, right, the factors that are driving the economy, they're impacting the print applications. So as we started in the compliance phase 6-8 weeks ago, that was the point where the government came in and said, hey, hold on, everybody stop, stand away. The only folks that are working, obviously, at that time were essential services and healthcare, God bless them, right? And with that, a lot of core applications, as I'm sure folks on this call will attest, well, a lot of core went down. But through that, right, as we evolved, as we went into that stability phase, stability is that holding pattern we've been in for the last number of weeks. Well, that also saw those applications evolve. And I'll shine a light on these, I promise, right? And then as we're coming out of it, and there's a fragmented recovery going on right now, some a little bit further ahead, some still stopped, no judgment, it's all fine, but they are driving applications and needs right now. And so hopefully as we shine a light on those phases and the applications, they'll be relevant to you, give you an understanding, but also help you to understand what can you do, what's coming, and how can you act. And so with that, that's the reason we look at the 4. And come on, baby, there we go. You're all probably sitting there likely saying, well, you're not telling me anything I didn't know before by showing me floor graphics, but there's a story around this, and it's important to understand. We did a call a number of weeks ago. We had the whole industry, we had a number of folks on the call. We had, I think, 450 people come in and just listen to this, print applications in a COVID-19 world. And what we showed was, of course, floor graphics, and people went, I get it. But the reason to show this two perspective shot is because even today, well, especially today, everyone's thinking that the graphic that we showed 4, 5, 6 weeks ago is the one on the right and that everybody's doing it. And that's not the case at all. The reality is that the majority of those businesses that are opening are still struggling, and maybe you're part of that group. And there's no shame in it, but maybe your graphics, if you're in this part of the industry, if you have these needs, you might very well look like what we show here on the left. And I kid you not, that is an example of many. That happens to be a national pizza chain. I'd be too embarrassed to tell you who that is. But the reality is there's no government standard, there's no guidance within industry as to what to do. So a lot of folks, and maybe you folks on the call, have been struggling just like the well-intended folks on the left when everybody wants to be on the right. The answer here is there are solutions, and we'll tie it back to the whole conversation. DSGUW and the KM-1 can do a super job to help you with graphics for floors, just like you see on the right-hand side. I want to continue this story just a little bit. Be patient with me if you would. It goes like this. Maybe you jumped on board. Maybe you've got these solutions if you're in that space, but I'll bet you if you did, when we started this 8 weeks ago, your graphics are probably rushed because you had to, only essential services, and we're all in this, it's all brand new. Everybody's kind of groping around in the dark, figuring stuff out, and I'll bet the graphics weren't exactly as you intended. At least our customers weren't. And so in that phase, as we went from compliance into stability, we saw the early installs evolve. A lot more professional, a lot more intel, a lot more forethought as to what these would be. Also, in that time, a lot of folks didn't know what was required in these graphics. You need to have some over laminate to protect them, by example. Extending that, though, what we know from the data we've seen, these installs are going to be a permanent part of every social gathering place in America. And just think about that. Wherever you are, whether you're in office, whether you're retail, whether you're restaurant trying to open up, these are going to be required for the next while for social distancing. But everything that we've read, everything we've seen indicates that these graphics will evolve to informational and then promotional. These are a communication touch point, and you're going to see a lot more of these being used at the end of this year for promotion. And we've got a graphic that I'm very pleased to show you in a minute or two. Anyway, that's the whole story. You have to have these installs. There are solutions at DSGUW, right? And a lot of them can be efficiently produced on the KM-1 that we're talking about. But it's not just the floor graphics. It's going to go everywhere, everywhere. Working with a lot of the leaders in market right now, we're seeing some concept art of what we'll expect as we return to offices. Maybe some of you are already starting down that path, and you're seeing some of these. The office space you left 8 weeks ago is going to be different as you return, all for these very reasons. So you can see what the expectation is in the office elevator space, and we have shots from Europe where they're doing this a lot. So expect to see more of these. Again, you've got tools at DSGUW, right? Lots of things that you can do. And moving on, there we go. Oops. Oh, I just fast forwarded. I apologize, folks. It's even things like this, right? You might have had a conference room that had 15 in capacity, but now with compliance with the regulations that are coming down, there is the requirement to have effective, good signage so that people are able to space. Now, I heard a very interesting industry comment. I'll just share this with you for those on the call. And it was this: no matter what the space that we're in, whether it's retail, office, or whatnot, the whole concern is about the cautious part of the American economy, people who are not comfortable in going back, and the very real need to have effective signage so that all can understand and all to comply. The danger to the economy is that there is not effective signage, there is not effective compliance. And if we don't have that, it's going to be an inhibitor for those to return to the economy confidently. It will slow our progression out of this mess. So we stop and ponder that and the role that graphics can play, no matter what business you're in. We have to really take a look at that. We only get a chance to do this right. And if it gets screwed up, the consequences are serious. So therein lies the reason for looking at solid, effective communication. And it's okay if you don't know the answers. We're all figuring this out together, and that's okay. And that's why it's so important that you reach out for leaders in the industry like DSGUW who can help you with these solutions. And again, maybe this applies to your business, maybe it doesn't, maybe it sparks an idea, but just know you've got resources and tools. That's the important part. All right, I did sneak ahead to this shot, apologize, but and you might go, what in the world is he showing? A picture of a half cut off dog. What is that all about? Well, here's the answer. I mentioned before, remember we talked about the phases 1, 2, 3, 4 in the economic recovery and the role of print through those stages. Look at the graphic. A buddy of mine in Minneapolis, St. Paul area was out recently. And frankly, since that time, we've seen even more. But this is where smart retailers are working with financially stable vendor partners and saying, this is no longer a cost I can incur, but what a wonderful opportunity for you, my brand partner, to help us with these needed, necessary communications, but you could win too by branding these. So we see this execution. This is in a liquor store with Captain Morgan, and they are now sponsoring and taking cost responsibility for the install and the removal of the social distancing graphics. We'll have an upcoming webinar second week of June, but already we're seeing new data. We've seen things like Heinz, brands like Pringles start to do this, obviously in the grocery market, but this is a rapid evolution. Just ideas, folks. Just what they're doing in that space, fascinating. Maybe it applies, maybe it doesn't, but this is where it's going. How does it apply to your business? Does it spark an idea? Maybe you haven't got all the ideas together yet. What can DSGUW help you to do to make your requirements effective. Okay, so that's what we have on floor graphics, but let's just change gears a little bit. As mentioned earlier, we work with a lot of industry groups. So in the National Restaurant Association, we work with the Nevada Gaming Commission and Vegas and what's happening there. We work with the hotel industry and across the board. And so why do I put this up? Fascinating. What happens in the restaurant industry, there are applications for many industry groups. So if you're a designer on the call, or you're in a different part of the market, maybe if you're in higher ed, here's something that we took away from our work with the National Restaurant Association, and it's this. Sanitary is obviously a requirement, and for restaurants, they're going down two specific paths. For documents, in this case menus, that are handled a lot by a number of users, the choice is one and done or a sanitizable document. That applies in so many different spaces. Let's just keep talking about restaurants. When it comes to menus, right, for every visitor, you're either going to hand them a menu and then pitch it. So that's a solution because it keeps the sanitary compliance. Or you're going to need to use a synthetic or a laminated menu in this case. But one of the great things, and the reason to bring it up here, there are so many great sanitizable synthetic menu options, or any durable document for that matter, like was mentioned earlier from Brian, right? The KM-1 does a great job with really robust inks. So if you have these sort of solutions, a menu or a durable document, you can do them fast and efficiently and cost effectively, right? Because you can use them and they can be washed down with alcohol or bleach. The new requirement in a safe and clean America. Go to a restaurant, go to a retailer, you will wash those documents down, the signage down with bleach or with alcohol, because you must be clean and safe in this opening economy. So that's a takeaway. That's what we saw working with the National Restaurant Association. But that learning of sanitizable documents or one and done, that's going to go throughout the economy for the next chapter. So be prepared and just know that you've got friends and resources at DSG, UW, KM, and GPA. All right, so if that was a learning there, we'll move to some specific examples. I did mention clean and safe. And that also applies to the window signage. You're going to have to wash those down, right? Every part of the store is going to need to be washed down, right? And we're used to seeing these compliance signs, you know, hey, COVID, cover up, do this, don't do that. These will evolve just like the floor graphics into more communication and then promotion. At this part, it's, you know, hey, be careful. It's going to evolve, hey, we're clean and safe. Please come in the store. When that starts to tail off, these same installs, these same graphics are going to remain, but the message will be different. It's going to turn into promotional. What America is learning, right, is that all of these flat surfaces represent an opportunity to communicate. Now it's about compliance, and over time, it's going to turn promotional. And then there on the right-hand side, a great example of some of these early adopters, KFC with in-store graphics. These happen to be obviously on a table, and these need to be sanitizable once again. So it's either going to be laminate or use the advantage of the KM-1. Those very tough inks we mentioned, you can wash them down with alcohol or bleach. Great examples. All right, so changing gears yet again, we're working closely with Vegas. Some similar takeaways. This happens to be from the MGM. It again pertains to documents and document handling and what they're going to do to keep visitors safe. And so let's take a look at some examples. Right, they're going to be doing a lot more on the left-hand side. They're going to do a lot more one-to-one, welcoming specific guests, particularly high rollers. So the do not disturb signs are going to be specifically tailored to those visitors and some new messaging. And you'll see a lot more variety on that side. You'll also see, enabled by the KM-1, you'll see these thick stocks. So the membership cards are going to be more along those lines. Those are not that revolutionary to the COVID market, but these might be, at least the one on the left. Stop, pause, and look. What the heck does that say? Maybe you saw this in the news, about a week and a half ago. Hilton, Marriott, and all the casinos in Vegas, they're doing this. And by the way, so are all the car agencies. And again, this is just an idea to share, and it sparks your own creativity. So what it shows us on the left-hand side, they have a different cleaning protocol once a guest leaves the room. And when they go through that protocol, when they leave, they put on this safety seal label on every door, right? And so when it means you, the new guest, they have a whole new system where you can bypass the check-in. As you can see with your smartphone, you can actually enter the room through that device. That technology was out about 2 years ago. It's going to be employed a lot more, but your assurance is now communicated. Your safety is being communicated by that label on the door. And that actually has a micro perf in it. So when you do go into the room, it will actually burst. And that is their way of assuring you that no one has been in that room and that it has been thoroughly cleaned. All right, so you get the point. Maybe it applies to you. Once again, maybe it doesn't. It's an idea spark. And then for all of us, we want to get over more to the right-hand side, a lot more of the promotional labels. Those are, I've seen some really great direct mail pieces where, the front is an 8-point tag and the back side is a promotional sticker or an informational sticker of every stripe. Those are now possible. And think about those for save the date and other really neat applications if you haven't looked at those before, right? So that's our variation on what we're seeing for Vegas and a little bit of the National Restaurant Association and industry trend. I want you to know there's just so much more as the economy moves into the fourth phase, the new normal. Oh, aren't we also fatigued with this COVID thing? We're going to be in it for a while, but there are glimmers of hope and there are things you can be thinking about, whether direct mail communication, but I want you to know the portfolio of solutions that's compatible with that KM-1. And the range is just awesome. And we thought we'd just shine a light on a couple of key ones, right? Oh, there's pearls. And that's what you're seeing here, a beautiful GPA gold pearl, right? It just lights up when imaged on the KM-1. Whether a direct mail piece, whether a communications, whether, you name it, but you can do so much with these pearl stocks that just light up, right? Past that, there's a whole range. We mentioned earlier from the National Restaurant Association, those one and done. It doesn't have to be commodity, right? People still care greatly about their brands. And so no, there's a huge range of KM-1 compatible papers. This happens to be a paper that repels oil. So even though that menu, right, has a spill on it, you just wipe that off and it still looks pristine and it reflects the image of the brand. Maybe that's a very specific, but no, from that one, there's, literally 3 and 4 and 5 score more of various options compatible with the KM-1. Just think about it from a design point of view and just know that you've got tremendous capability and tremendous options. And yeah, then you can get into the foils, right? Particularly, we've seen a huge spike on these in the cannabis and the casino industry. The more bling, the better for those, but they don't have the exclusive on that. There's a whole bunch more. Just know that these types of stocks, we're just showing one right now, know that there's a whole portfolio of foils. It brings a lot of bling, it brings a lot of attention, and it lights up, right? So just know that that's part of your arsenal from a design or execution standpoint, right? And then two, I would love to point out that, people get stuck on paper and, that's what I do in print. When you got a KM-1 at your disposal, right? Like DSGUW, you can print on fabrics and you can do installs like this. You can do these applications and so much more. So printing on digital fabrics is now a possibility as well, right? So many different ideas, so many different capabilities. Just know that the potential is there to do so much. On behalf of GPA, we always appreciate time. I'm going to flip this back over to Chris, but that's a quick snapshot. You'll see us a lot across the social media platforms, and that's us in a nutshell. Chris will put up at the end my contact information along with Brian. If there's anything that any of us on this call can do to help you in your success, we got your back. You reach and you'll find us responding. So happy to help any way that we can. And with that, I will put it back over to you, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Craig. Excellent. I tell you, every time I see it, I get some more ideas. So phenomenal. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. So a couple of things before we get to the questions. We've got a few of them that we're going to answer. The contact information that you see on your screen right now is also in the document. So if you haven't downloaded those handouts, expand that orange arrow, download those 3 handouts. Again, I'll leave this open for about 5 minutes after we finish up. if anybody hasn't had a chance to do that. Also, keep your eye open for an email coming from us. We're going to do our part 2 of response optimization at the beginning of June. It's going to be all about straightforward omni-channel strategies that work, easy to implement ways to take advantage of how you can do some cool omni-channel stuff. So let's get to the questions. First question, I think, was answered, Fred, which was, is it the same paper stock? Actually, when we first were investigating the device, we asked Brian, hey, can you give us a list of approved stocks? Because we've been buying digital devices for decades. And he said, why don't I give you a list of things that don't work? Because that's a lot easier. So pretty much, there's a lot of flexibility on the stock side. Brian, would you add anything to that?
No, we've from a paper standpoint, there's one or two that just get wavy after printing, but literally there's nothing from a paper standpoint that we can't print on.
Awesome. This one is a softball. How is the press different than the large-sized HP press? Who did you pay in the audience?
Oh, that's shameless, Brian. Who did you pay?
So the Indigo 10 or 12,000, 15,000. First of all, is a 20 by 20. It's a 20 by 29 inch press, so it's a 4 up versus a 6 up press here. The flexibility of our inks print on any paper with no restriction of pre-coating that you need to be concerned with on the Indigo, and durability of the inks, it's night and day between the platforms. So we've got many Indigo large printers on the Indigo 10, 12,000 that have made the switch to the KM-1. So I can be happy to tell you more offline.
Great, thanks, Brian. Craig, this one I think is for you. This is the second question we've gotten around your foil papers, so it must be something people like. Are the foil stocks available in the large sizes that the KM-1 can run?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So we bring them in folios and cut them to size. So there's the portfolio, there's 3 core, and we're adding 2 more. So absolutely, we can happily do that with our friends at DSGUW and support any application.
Excellent. Last one I have, perfect binding / saddle wire, both. I imagine that means, can you perfect bind coming off this press as well as saddle wire? I know the answer to that is yes, as well as case binding. We actually just completed a project for a high school yearbook where they decided to use a local printer that was not deemed an essential business. And they had to get these things done really quickly, and they were case bound, and it was printed on the KM-1, and it looked absolutely phenomenal. Probably the nicest yearbook these kids have ever gotten. So they deserve it. I've got a senior in high school, and it's been a tough spring for them for sure. All right, so that's all we have. I don't see any other questions. Again, everybody, thank you so much for attending. Please fill out the survey in the follow-up email, and this will be posted in about an hour, maybe 2, on our channel, and the link to that is also in your handout, so you can watch some of our other videos if you'd like. So have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, all. Take care. Be well.